exhibition beyond imagination at the Henry Ford Marvel Universe of Super.
The vice presidential candidates debate tonight, and Vice President Pence, of course, the head of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. The current numbers are going to be hard to explain away. Let's take a look at the current numbers. You look at the 50-state trend map right now, and this is just a very sober first week of October. 25 states, as it gets colder, 25 states heading in the wrong direction. That means reporting more new infections now compared to a week ago. You see the orange and the red on the map. Those are the states heading in the wrong direction. They now include Texas and Arizona. They, of course, were a big part of the summer surge. Let's hope those are just temporary switches there. But 25 states heading up, 22 states holding steady, only 3 states. Only 3 of the 50 states reporting fewer infections now than a week ago. That is very troubling as you head into the colder weather. 5 states reported over 2,000 new cases yesterday. 5 states. Now, maybe you're not surprised when you see big states like Florida, Texas, and California with more than 2,000 new infections. But look, Kansas, more than 2,000 new infections reported yesterday. Wisconsin as well. Wisconsin is a hot spot. And this is the saddest map of all. And again, when you have more cases, which we have at the moment, then count a week or two, you get more deaths. 22 states. It's the red and the orange, and you notice it's across the northern half of the country where temperatures are colder right now. 22 states reporting more deaths, more coronavirus deaths now compared to a week ago. 11 holding steady, 17 states trending down in their week-to-week death count. If you look at the case timeline now, again, the trend line heading in the wrong direction. This is where we are. Call it a plateau, call it a slight uptick, but we are above. We're at 43,000 new infections yesterday. We're about that as the level, the average daily new infections above 40,000 now. Remember, it was below 20,000 when we started the big summer surge up to here. This line not moving up. You see the trajectory. It's not moving up straight like that, but this is a stubborn plateau right now at about 43,000. The fear is, as it gets colder, it will go higher. Nationally, the positivity rate in pretty good shape. You want to be at 5% or lower. 4.7, but that's a national look. When you look state by state, again, especially in the northern half of the country, 23% positivity in Idaho, 15 in Wyoming, 23 in South Dakota, 13 in Nebraska, Kansas double digits, Missouri double digits, Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana, and so on. Dr. Fauci looks at these numbers. He says, I know a lot of you just simply don't want to listen to me. He is begging, as we head into the colder weather, to give him a chance.
It occurs because of the lack of implementation of simple public health measures. It's so frustrating because it's not rocket science. You don't need to lock down. You almost want to say, okay, country, maybe 50% of you hate me because you think I'm trying to destroy the country. But do me a favor. Listen to me for like maybe 6 weeks or so and do these things. You would see the level of infection go down. Absolutely.
Joining us now is Dr. Tom Inglesby. He's the director for the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Dr. Inglesby, it's good to see you again. You can hear the exasperation in Dr. Fauci there, essentially begging people, just put on a mask, separate, give it a few weeks, and watch the numbers. But here we are, 7+ months in, and in a lot of the country, that's still not the case. You just saw me go through the numbers. 43,000 new infections on average. The positivity rates in double digits in most of the states, many of the states where it's now getting colder. Where are we going?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think as a country, we're moving in the wrong direction again. If you look at where we were 3 weeks ago, we're 20% higher in terms of national numbers of cases. The numbers of hospitalizations are going up for the first time in a while. The number of ICU beds that are occupied by COVID patients is beginning to tick up again. And we're seeing some states, in the worst condition they have been since the start of this pandemic. In the Midwest, the Dakotas, Wisconsin, the Mountain West, they're really, really high numbers. And we're going to have to work to turn those around, or we're going to have a healthcare crisis like we're beginning to see in Wisconsin.
And the numbers going up at a time when we now know anyone's hopes for getting a vaccine are going to be delayed at least some. The FDA finally put out some new guidelines. The White House had resisted them, but then allowed them to go forward. The president for weeks has said we'll have a vaccine soon. He keeps saying soon, and he keeps saying possibly before the election. I think that's off the table now if you look at the new guidance. Data from phase 3 studies should include a median follow-up duration of at least 2 months after completion of the full vaccination regimen to help provide adequate information to assess the vaccine's benefit-risk profile. Now, that leaves me without a doubt that we're looking at the end of the year. It's October 5th now, right? And so we're looking at the end of the year at the earliest, and the president's not happy. He tweeted last night, new FDA rules make it more difficult for them to speed up vaccines for approval before Election Day. Just another political hit job. He's accusing his own Food and Drug Administration chief of a political hit job. I'm not going to make you do politics, but in terms of the timeline, when is the earliest now that there might be a vaccine ready, even for just limited emergency authorization use?
Well, it does look like, because of this new FDA guidance, that it will be another couple of months. They need to see the data after the results are come in for some period of time, because we need to have time to be able to make sure that there are no safety side effects. Some of the effects of vaccines that we've seen in the past have not occurred for 6 to 8 weeks or even a bit longer. And so I think the FDA is absolutely doing the right thing and is in consultation with the companies and making its decisions based on science. And I think we need to follow that.
One of the giant concerns, you know better than I do, Dr. Inglesby, is as it gets colder and as more people go inside, especially if they're also getting lax in terms of mask wearing and keep distance and the like, is the impact on possible new infections. And I want you to listen to Dr. Fauci. There's been a debate for some time about how long, if you emit coronavirus, how long can the aerosols hang in the air? Listen to Dr. Fauci.
In a restaurant in China, where people far distant from the index case that was infected got infected, very likely because the air conditioning recirculated the aerosol that was out of a person's mouth who was not symptomatic, and that was transmitted. So it's a highly transmissible respiratory virus.
And aerosol is a concern.
It is a concern. Once and for all, let's settle that. It is a concern.
As you know, like recently as a week or so ago, that was a back and forth between the CDC putting up guidance, taking it down, then putting it back up. Why has it been so long for that to be certain, as Dr. Fauci says it is?
Well, I think most of the cases that have been investigated, most of the outbreaks that have been investigated have shown that transmission is happening almost, predominantly at short range. But there have been examples of people being infected at longer range in indoor settings. And I think it's taken some time for scientific agencies to really judge that the evidence was strong enough to be able to say that aerosol transmission was happening. I think there's been evidence growing for some time. It's not a high percent of cases, but it's definitely enough there. So I think CDC's guidance now is very clear that in indoor places with poor ventilation, that transmission can occur at greater than 6 feet. And we should minimize the time that we spend in those settings.
We absolutely should. And I hope folks listen to you as they listen to that exasperated Dr. Fauci we played at the top of the segment. Dr. Inglesby, as always, grateful for your expertise and your insights. Thank you, sir.
To go until Election Day, and Joe Biden's opening up a big lead. CNN's new poll shows him leading by 16 points, 57% to 41% for President Trump. Let's get more now on the state of the race as we count down to the election from CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. He's at the Magic Wall. John?
Don, 4 weeks from tonight, we will be counting the votes. A lot can change in 4 weeks, but right now, Joe Biden has a lead that is growing and that, frankly, is quite overwhelming. Let's take a look at our new poll, and the headline number is this. This is a wow. The largest lead of the race for Joe Biden. 57% for the Democrat, the former vice president, 41% for President Trump. A 16-point spread. Big anyway, all the more important because Joe Biden is so well above 50%. That's your goal in politics, get above 50. Donald Trump getting just 4 in 10 votes right now. nationally across the United States. Why? Well, voters have taken a giant turn to Joe Biden on the big issues. Look at the gaps here. Look at the gaps, not just the lead, but the gap. Who can best handle racial inequality? Wow. Who can best handle the number one issue in the country right now? Joe Biden, more than 20 points. Who's better to handle your health care? 20 points. Crime and safety. The president's trying to make law and order a big issue. A big advantage, 12 points for Joe Biden. In the economy, the two candidates essentially split there, a slight edge for Biden. That's essentially a statistical tie. When it comes to the issues that matter to voters, a big edge for Joe Biden. That translates into big edge when you ask them, who are you going to vote for? But it's not just the issues, it's who you want as a leader, the personal characteristics. Don, look at these numbers. Who would best unite the country? Lopsided for Joe Biden. Who is honest and trustworthy? A 25-point advantage. People don't trust the incumbent president of the United States in the middle of a pandemic. A 25-point advantage on honest and trustworthy. Same, a 20-point advantage. Which candidate more cares about you, the issues that matter to you? Big edge for Biden. You might call that the empathy factor. Plans to address the country's problems. Again, 15-point lead, 16 points for Joe Biden there, and even on keeping the United States safe, whether we're talking about law and order domestically, Commander-in-Chief, Joe Biden, a 12-point edge over the president. So Trump supporters are saying this is a national poll. Remember 2016, we picked president state by state. Well, they would be right. Number one, that's a big national lead. Number two, the battleground state polling also overwhelmingly coming in to show a Biden advantage. Brand new Pennsylvania poll today. 12 points in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Donald Trump flipped that state 4 years ago. Critical to his 2020 chances. Joe Biden enters the last 4 weeks with a big lead in Pennsylvania, where he campaigned today. Arizona, that was red in 2016. Not since Bill Clinton has a Democrat won Arizona. Comfortable. Biden lead in Arizona. Florida, the battleground of all battlegrounds. Always very close. That's a close race, but advantage Biden in a state the president has to win. Donald Trump, the president has to win Florida. Donald Trump does. Joe Biden doesn't. Needed, but look, the lead there. And Ohio, no Republican has won the White House without Ohio in modern times. It's a tie right now. A tie in the state of Ohio. A state, again, Joe Biden doesn't need it. The president does, and he is competitive. So, Don, I'll close just by going back to this. Yes, it's a national poll, but it's the biggest lead of the race heading into the final 4 weeks. A lot can happen. You have to say advantage, overwhelming advantage. Biden.
I do want to go straight now to the White House Deputy Communications Director and Deputy Press Secretary, Brian Morgenstern. So, Brian, we've just found out that Stephen Miller has now also tested positive for coronavirus. Are there any more positives this hour that you're aware of that we don't know of?
No, Aaron, and thank you for having me on. Obviously, we've been dealing with this for a number of months now, and we know what to do. We are isolating when necessary. We have our hand sanitizer everywhere. We are distancing. We are going about the work of the American people, Kaylee and others, and Stephen working remotely, continuing to carry on our work. The president, we're thrilled to have him back, and we have precautions in the residence, and we have ways that we can interact with him in a safe way with PPE and at a distance. And we just want the American people to know, we appreciate all the well wishes we've received, but we want the American people to know that we are doing the people's business. We're just carrying it on in a safe way. We know how to do this. We've been in the pandemic for a while now, and so we're able to carry on.
So when you say you know how to do this, I hope you're not surprised at the point that I'm going to make here, which is, of course, we all know how to do this, which is social distance and masking. And we all know that you all have not been wearing masks for many of those months, right? Just that's the reality. We see it in all the pictures. So Brian, when we hear Kaylee, we're talking, Caitlin talking about how people will go in meetings with superiors and they don't want to be the only one in the room not wearing a mask, that they felt that there was pressure to not wear masks because of that. The one thing that we know works. What's your response to that? I mean, is everyone, you wearing one now in every meeting, every place?
So many people do wear masks. We do distance. We typically leave chairs between one another in meetings. We, of course, are tested quite frequently. Those of us who have meetings at work, particularly with senior leadership like the president or vice president, we're tested quite frequently. So we do take a number of precautions, and we're able to carry on here. And like I said, when cases pop up, this isn't the first time. We've had the National Security Advisor as well. I saw you and Caitlin mention Katie Miller earlier on in the pandemic. So we know what happens. The people have to isolate. We do contact tracing. There is contact tracing, by the way, going on with the White House Medical Unit, and there's an epidemiologist from the CDC embedded there. If they need help, they know where to go. So we're going through the process here and just carrying on our work in a safe way. And thank God the folks who've been infected have not had severe cases, and they've been able to work remotely and continue their duties.
So the president, you mentioned that there are systems in place now with PPE. Obviously, the CDC has made it clear a mask is meant to protect other people in case you are infected. The person we know to be infected, right, is the president. So is he wearing a mask?
So I haven't seen him lately, but he wears a mask when anyone is in proximity to him. And the way we've set it up is people generally will stand back from him. Everyone else has masks, PPE, goggles, the appropriate attire. And so we're able to be around him, but in a safe way. And that's what he wants. He needs to be back at work. He needs to show the country that he's resilient and strong, and that's what he's doing. And his staff is likewise supporting him in that way as well.
Absolutely. So what you're telling me, though, and this is important because you saw all the images that we saw last night, right? When he took off the mask, the White House photographer came around him, and that was within proximity. He then went amidst a group of people, and he was not wearing his mask, and they were. So you're saying that categorically is not happening anymore. He isn't maskless while others are around him.
So Aaron, you're showing the footage here. He's outside on a balcony, certainly not within 6 feet, probably more of anyone.
Well, the photographer came up behind him and he has coronavirus.
It's hard to breathe on somebody behind you, but the point is he's still on a balcony, he's outside, and the photographer, of course, had her mask on, and she's trained like the rest of us. We know how to interact in a way that is safe, and that's what she was doing. And then, of course, the president going back inside, where we have people 6 feet back, we maintain our distance, stay out of the personal space, as is,
certainly
sort of
in those
custom.
images they weren't, but I mean, again, he has coronavirus. I mean, I know I feel this sometimes talking to people around him about this issue. It seems a little defying reality, right? I would imagine you wouldn't have behaved that way.
No, but Aaron, it's important to note that we can interact with somebody with coronavirus. It's not a death sentence. They're not a leper. It's someone that obviously is of good health according to his doctor. He still has the virus, but it doesn't mean that we can't interact with him in a safe way.
Right.
And so, that's what we're going to continue to do.
With a mask, absolutely. I do want to just start see the best you can tell us about the timeline, Brian, as I was laying it out, because it is important, right? When you have all these people in quarantine, the president was in the hospital to know how this actually started. So when the president started feeling symptoms, we are told that was Thursday, right? So that means he was almost certainly infected on Tuesday when he went to the debate, because of the time the CDC has told us it takes between infection and the onset of symptoms. So can you categorically, Brian, say he tested negative on the day of the debate?
I don't have that. I have what I think everyone knows now, that what we've put together in terms of timeline, which is that we know that Hope had tested positive on Thursday at some point later. The president had that confirmatory test, which he announced to the nation very late at night then.
Yep.
And so that's the information that we have. But the president had not been obviously showing any symptoms or anything like that. And contact tracing is an important point, Aaron, because I think there's been a little bit of misunderstanding about contact tracing. It's 48 hours looking backward from the time of a positive test or demonstrating symptoms. And so a lot of people are referring back to the Rose Garden event. But if people then a week later or something like that would have a positive test or symptoms, it doesn't necessarily mean that looking back a week would be what a public health professional would do to prevent further transmission of the virus, which is what contact tracing is meant to do. It's not meant to go back and find patient zero necessarily. I understand there's a curiosity there, but it's meant to really mitigate further transmission. So that's how our health unit and the CDC embed and our supporting staff are taking care of that.
So, do you know the answer to the question of, I'm asking not the answer, I'm asking do you know the answer to when the president's last negative test was? Do you actually know that information, Brian?
I personally do not. I've not asked him or the doctors, to go back through records and things like that. I'm not sure. But as I said, we look at it from a contact tracing sort of forward-looking exercise. That's what the health professionals, that's what the CDC does. That's what our med unit does, and we're letting them do their work. And to the extent other people have positive tests, it's the health professionals that handle their positive case that then do the 48-hour look back and handle that sort of contact tracing as well. But the president is resilient, he's strong, he's back at work, we're supporting him, and we're going about our business as well in a safe way.
So do you not think it's important to know how this started when you had the president in the hospital, 6 of 8 people in a debate prep room with coronavirus, another one of them is in the hospital, top generals of the United States are in quarantine, this is all coming out of the White House. It's only a point of curiosity to you to know how this started?
Well, the point is to mitigate further transmission, and it could have come from any.
I understand your point.
Sources.
That's what contact tracing is about. But do you think it's important to the American people to know how it started?
But it's almost unknowable, Aaron. I mean, if you want to go back to the Rose Garden event, there were a number of journalists that subsequently had positive tests. There were, of course, any number of guests potentially who maybe were negative that day, but something happened later. So it's almost an unknowable question, and we're not interested in blaming someone. We're interested in taking care of what we need to do and supporting the health professionals with contact tracing.
So, as I mentioned, the president's doctor said the president's doing extremely well today. You referenced that as well, Brian. We've been told some of the treatments he's received, right, which is obviously important, but his doctor has so far not spoken about the president's lung scans, which is important, obviously, right? We know this is important. Lung damage and what it can do to someone, pneumonia, can harm the lungs over the long term. These are things that for the American people are really important to know, right? We are all about, as citizens, to vote in an election to determine whether President Trump is physically able to handle another 4 years. He will go in, if elected, as the oldest president, as with Joe Biden, but as with Donald Trump. Why not be honest and put all this information out there if there's nothing to hide?
Well, Aaron, I think we've been extraordinarily transparent. Multiple briefings by the doctor, half a dozen memos from the doctor. The president himself has spoken to the camera a number of times. Kayleigh has briefed and gaggled. The chief has spoken to the press. I'm here speaking with you, saying that the president is strong and resilient and back at work. So he's being amazingly transparent. I have to say, I mean, the president's about twice my age. He's got 10 times my energy. I have absolutely zero doubt that he is healthy and strong and able to lead the country, just as he's doing now, and he's demonstrating that. It seems to be making some folks angry, but he's doing great, and that should be a moment for celebration for our country.
It certainly should be, but people should know the circumstances around that. The lung damage, obviously he's on a steroid. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that are important and not personal, private information when you want to be the president of the United States and reelected in that role.
If you see your state, the deadline for registering to vote online is approaching. It takes just 2 minutes to do it right now. Don't miss the deadline. Make your voice count.
Breaking news, the Vice President's Chief of Staff, Mark Short, has just said that the Pence team objects to a plexiglass barrier being installed for both Pence and Senator Kamala Harris at tomorrow night's first and only vice presidential debate. CNN's Ryan Nobles joins me now. Ryan, just to make it clear, it is the Trump-Pence White House's own reckless behavior that has caused the White House to become a hot zone. And Pence has not been quarantining, even though he should be, according to medical experts. And now they're objecting to the idea that Senator Harris wants some sort of safety on the stage.
That's exactly right, Jake. The Harris camp asked for this provision after the debate between the two presidential candidates last week, which, of course, President Trump, shortly after that debate, tested positive for the coronavirus. So they thought that additional precautions should be put in place here in Salt Lake City for the vice presidential debate. Among the things they asked for was that the candidates be separated further apart than what was originally plan. They agreed to that from 7 to 12 feet. And then the Harris campaign also asked that both the vice president and the senator have a plexiglass barrier in front of them to separate them even more. Now, the Pence camp said they had no problem with Harris having the plexiglass barrier around her. What they object to is the vice president having that same plexiglass barrier. Mark Short, who is the vice president's chief of staff, telling Art Jim Acosta that they don't believe that there's any additional safety benefit to having that plexiglass barrier put in place. What we don't know at this point, Jake, if it's going to have any impact on whether or not this debate is going to take place. There are ongoing levels of communication between the campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates, which runs the debate. I know that the campaigns are right now doing a walkthrough on the stage behind me. We were just inside the building and saw that taking place. So still a lot of back and forth taking place here. But the sense we're getting right now, Jake, is that this isn't necessarily a deal breaker for the Harris campaign.
Just to be clear, Ryan, it's the vice president who, according to health experts, including one I just interviewed a few minutes ago, who say that Vice President Pence should be quarantined right now because he was in direct contact with so many people who have tested positive. He's the one who probably should be making all these offers as opposed to slapping them down. But in fact, a spokesperson for the vice president actually even mocked Senator Harris for wanting a plexiglass guard.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jake. Katie Miller, who is the vice president's communications director, told CNN that if Senator Harris, she said, quote, if Senator Harris wants to have a plexiglass fortress around herself, have at it. She wants to use a fortress around herself. Have at it. You're right, Jake. The tone is a mocking one when there is so much evidence to the fact that this White House has had just a careless regard for the spread of the coronavirus, and that extends to the vice president himself. Even though he has tested negative for the last number of days since the president's diagnosis came through, there is still that lingering risk. He was among that group of people at the event where Amy Coney Barrett was officially nominated by President Trump, and he was not wearing a mask, and for the most part, he continues to not wear a mask. Jake?
It's recklessness and an unbelievable hubris at the same time. It's rather staggering. Ryan Nobles, thanks so much. Joining us now to discuss emergency medicine physician Dr. Derek Cass. Dr. Cass, do you think it's safe for Senator Kamala Harris to be on the same stage with Vice President Pence, who has obviously been exposed to many people who have since tested positive for coronavirus? and has not quarantined himself.
So let's be honest, this is not only about Senator Harris. What she's doing is advocating for the appropriate behavior from the vice president for everybody at the venue. Remembering that when he enters the facility, will he be wearing a mask? When he gets on stage, what happens to the housekeeping staff, the AV staff? All the people in the audience, the moderator. The only plexiglass barrier that should be mandatory at this vice presidential debate should be around Vice President Pence. And let's be honest, if he's saying, I don't care enough about those at the facility, not just about Senator Harris, then he's really exemplifying what it means to be the leader of the COVID task force.
And what did you make when his spokeswoman, Katie Miller, mocked Senator Harris for wanting a plexiglass container, saying, you know, if she wants a fortress, have at it, or something like that? What did you make of that tone as a physician? And as somebody who, I should point out, has had coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I walk out of the house with a mask on every day, even having antibodies, knowing that I'm unlikely to carry this virus to anybody else. When I go to the store, there's a plexiglass barrier between me and the person working at the grocery store to protect them from everybody. So what do I think? I think it's embarrassing for them, and I think that it shows the same tone. They appreciate everything else.
That's my name, Matthew Stillman, right there. So
I don't know if you can see it.
it's Matthew there.
Coronavirus killed more than 200,000 Americans. President Trump pretended that it was no big deal. But then it landed him in the hospital on supplemental oxygen, full of steroids and a cocktail of aggressive medications. Grimacing while he breathed with obvious effort as he arrived home at the White House last night. That no big deal of a coronavirus showed that the White House and its inadequate precautions were just an opportunity waiting to be seized. But the president, supported by helicopter transport and the best medicine that your taxpayer dollars can buy, is still unencumbered by science or fact. And now he's trying to sell his infection as the sacrifice of a true leader.
As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better. Maybe I'm immune. I don't know.
Leading people off a cliff is technically leading, but it's also stupid and deadly. So where did he come up with this brilliant argument?
This is like when the general gets wounded by the invisible enemy, goes and gets patched up, and then gets right back to the front line.
Except Trump hasn't assumed the risk. He is demanding Americans take. He's not fighting on the formula field. To put this into terms that he would understand, he's doing what we refer to in golf as sandbagging. He's evening the odds of the game and flying. He's surrounding himself by people who get rapid coronavirus tests before they get to see him, and yet he's still got it. calls the key weapon that we have to fight the virus. The president's behavior was an open door to the virus, a red carpet that he rolled out, and the virus walked right in. And that, according to his campaign, is actually a personal experience he can tout from a position of strength.
Listen, he has experience as commander-in-chief. He has experience as a businessman. He has experience now fighting the coronavirus as an individual. Those first-hand experiences, Joe Biden, he doesn't have those.
So the strategy now is to cast his likely self-inflicted infection as a strength and downplay COVID's lethality, as he did just this morning. While he is still not out of the woods, according to his doctor, Trump again comparing it to the flu. And where did he get that from?
Number one, it's very contagious. And number two, it's not nearly as lethal as the experts told us it was going to be.
This is serious. It's very infectious, but it's probably not going to, almost certainly not going to kill you.
They are balanced and unafraid to be dangerously ignorant. It will probably almost certainly not kill you, except when it certainly does, like it did to the more than 210,000 Americans who had died in nearly 8 months, severely outpacing the flu. Just look at the past decade. During a bad flu season, which lasts about 7 months, the flu kills about 60,000 Americans. In about the same number of months of coronavirus, we're at almost 4 times that right now. The number of COVID deaths have surpassed the past 5 flu seasons combined, according to the CDC, and according to the president as well, because remember, this is how he described coronavirus privately back in February.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
This message is for men who hope to live to age 120, if that's not you.
But he tells the public the opposite, and Fox backs him up. Its most prominent voices promoting a dying by COVID is okay theme, as they tell millions of their viewers, many of whom are older and more vulnerable to this virus, this.
The median age of death for coronavirus in this country is 78 years old. As it happens, 78 is also the life expectancy for all people in this country. In other words, it's dangerous to be an old person who has the coronavirus. It's also dangerous to be an old person, period. At some point, we're all going to die. Dying is the central fact of life. Unfortunately, a secular society has no answer for that, no explanation, and no comfort to give. In the face of it. So no wonder we're so terrified.
The median age of a Fox News viewer is 67 years old. That's the median age. And Tucker Carlson is bringing his show to them from the comfort and isolation of a studio where health precautions are taking place. Well, perhaps he should listen to someone that he admires very much, who said this in March.
People you trust, people you probably voted for, have spent weeks minimizing what is clearly a very serious problem. No doubt these people have good intentions, as they say this, many of them anyway. They may not know any better. Maybe they're just not paying attention. Or maybe they believe they're serving some higher cause by shading reality. And there's an election coming up. Best not to say anything that might help the other side. We get it. But they're wrong. The Chinese coronavirus is a major event that will affect your life. And by the way, it's definitely not just the flu.
That's right. Before Tucker Carlson subscribed to the no big deal school of BS coronavirus thought, he told his viewers about the dangers of it. What the president appears to be calling for here is herd immunity, and his TV buddies are pushing it. Go out, be normal, they say, but in parentheses, the part they don't say. A lot of you will die, but not percentage-wise, just hundreds of thousands of you. No big deal, right? What they're really saying is that some people will have to be sacrificed, but they're not raising their hands. They're raising the hands of Americans who have given them their trust. Case in point, the campaign says it won't change it. Thing about its rallies.
We're going to make sure that we take everybody's temperature as they're coming into events. We're going to give everybody a mask.
Which is what you've been doing.
Hand sanitizer.
Which is what you've been doing.
Encourage people to wear their masks. And you know what? That's been a very safe and very responsible thing to do. And that's what we've done from the beginning of this. We're taking this very seriously. And so we've always been leading from the front on that.
And Team Trump is still mocking masks.
That's a political statement to scare people wearing that mask. You do not need that mask when you're standing on a podium and nobody is within half a football. I don't wear masks as much as probably I should. And I haven't gotten COVID either, and a lot of people on both sides of that.
I mean,
what they claim is science is nonsense.
Rudy Giuliani, mind you, coughed through that interview. And it's not just masks that Trump and his sycophants mock. For tomorrow night's VP debate, the commission decided to push Trump's gas between Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence, who is rebutting CDC guidelines to quarantine despite his exposure to COVID-positive patients. Mike Pence's spokeswoman mocked it. She said, quote, if Senator Harris wants to use a fortress around herself, have at it. Katie Miller, who was infected herself this summer, is mocking a campaign that has been more careful and hasn't had an outbreak, like it's a weakness. She's representing a White House that is now home to a COVID cluster of the president's and aides, hacking, fatigued, struggling to breathe, or quarantining and working from home, refusing the CDC's help to even figure out how big that cluster is. And as Team Trump tries to spin this, the irony and cell phones are as abundant as the viral load in the West Wing. The campaign tweeted out an NFL clip with the president's head superimposed on a 49ers player beating an Eagle to score. Guess they forgot the 49ers actually lost that game. And then Senator Kelly Loeffler tweeting out a clip of Trump pinning down the coronavirus in a WWE match. Here's the thing. Wrestling is fake. And so is the propaganda that says the coronavirus is no big deal. But the cost is real.
As the famed philosopher Ty Webb once said, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line